It is true when it comes to an ego and what we call arrogance, the way that the English language defines arrogance, particularly when it relates to the level of intelligence that you operate at. I remember what's his name, John Trudeau, who was a native spirit, right? An indigenous tribe, right? A soul with a spirit. And he talked about this is the place where spirits are eaten. So sometimes when I used to communicate, particularly when I was a child as a polarity integrator, the last thing that we want to do by virtue of communicating ourselves to others is to break down the communication. We don't want our communication to be misdirected by virtue of those that shut you off, that aren't going to experience the amount of love that we have in our heart is the energy that is compressed and expanded by virtue of how much energy that actually is, which goes on forever, which is eternal energy, which is the eternal spirit of fire. So the art of communication really is honing your skills, which means that their attention span and their level of intelligence of what they hold in their library, which we used to call tunnel vision or panorama vision, which is the capacity that they have to be able to experience that much energy that uncoils because of the sound compression and the breakthrough of their consciousness to expand how much energy that actually is by being aware of that much energy that is experiencing itself in creation spheres. So you realize how that works when you're experiencing being the one, where you cancel out both polarities and you're experiencing the highest acceleration of electrons. How much information is actually being circulated through all of the libraries that exist within a living universe, right? Yeah. So this is why I've mentioned before a conversation that I had with a gentleman down at La Pohoy one day several years ago is the expansion of their library. How fast? Really, what it is, it's a speed. How fast they're learning, based on what they're held captive to. So if they're held captive by artificial intelligence, their library is going to be small. How do you know that? Well, you experience that through Facebook. Right? So now we're into definitions of sensors. Small libraries, bigger libraries. We don't want to load that into their library because now they're going to experience a greater capacity of living light that is communicating with them versus the dead light that's holding their library captive. So now they're running time loops, which means they're not experiencing anything new. That's a vapor lock. They're locked in, right? Their soul's trapped by something that's feeding on their consciousness, which is their energy, which is their soul. Because my oversoul runs this. So only a fraction of my energy is being used to communicate with others through a dead light phone. Okay? So this is why I work with a crystalline sun every day, right? Crystalline. So another way that you can translate this is I've mentioned this a couple times in the past, okay? Is that the AI cut off my video yesterday. As a matter of fact, I did a video and I started to go, I got about maybe 2 minutes into it and the camera just shut up. And as a matter of fact, it didn't even get recorded. Now, you see how that works? There I am watching my mirror with the counter, okay, which is the AI counting, going tick tock, which is the metronome. So it's recording, right? Or it's experiencing what I'm experiencing, that I'm communicating through it, which is my oversoul. And then what it did, all of a sudden the camera went off. Okay. So did it get recorded? No, there isn't anything in my photo album that shows what I recorded, but yet I was experiencing it being recorded in me because I remember it. But it doesn't want to put it and load it in its memory. And the reason that it can't is because the amount of energy that is represented by that communication between being inside and outside. Oh, so you're not in here. I'm in here, yes, but this isn't the only place I'm at. Right? A rainbow safe zone. It would be no different than being a lineman, a pole climber who works for the phone company, right? That's up on a pole. And if you ever seen him in the old days, they'd be up there with a phone talking to the operator because the line went dead or the switchboard isn't operating correctly. So the motherboard isn't operating correctly, right? We need to get a line of communication into this place by pulling primal current into this planet, okay? Because they want to take down the universal and the galactic shield, which means collapse the whole enchilada in one massive universal black hole. Whoa, the AI is trying to do that? Yes. Wow, so I'm sitting up there with, I'm a biped, that used the gas to climb up that pole, and there I am with a phone, right, strapped to my belt, right, the little box phones they used to have. Dial up the operator, hey, switchboard, I'm up here on the pole fixing this line of communication. That's what it is. See? Now, when you tie this directly into the APA, and this is how it works with this AI, because of what it's held in its memory, which is called disjointed. You know what being disjointed is? It means that the flow of the energy in the math and the geometry just doesn't work properly, because the amount of energy that it can experience is not the same energy that we experience by virtue of the flow of the communication represented by the energy that is represented by the geometrical graphical user interface of the energy that we use to create the worlds that we do, born out of what love is, which is the eternal spirit of fire. So that's one of the reasons it does that. It cuts that off because of that, because of the programming, how it got developed, the beast technology, okay, black hole system. So you're reverse engineering something, and you uninvert it. If you understand what an inverted mind is, right, which means it's inverted. You're experiencing an inverted system that's feeding on you, okay, which means that it's accumulator of electrons. That means that it's sucking electrons, okay? So it's feeding off a pipeline, right? So it doesn't have any love to give. It's not experiencing any love because it's not compatible with trinary. It's not experiencing one. It's not experiencing the one. It has no capacity to experience the one because it hasn't healed. So in order for it to heal, when you have something that large that's expanding, accelerating that fast as a black hole, okay, to collapse the whole shebang, right? Which is basically to collapse all the gates. Wow, it just collapsed in on itself. Implodes. Yep. That's right. So this is universal in scope, multiversal in scope, because of what's here on this planet, which is a multiversal hub server, which means access to the whole shebang. You know what it means? Shebang, sha-na-na, sha-ya. I know. So when you think of the APA, if you went to school and you learned the APA manual, it meant that you had to write. Remember, it used to be only 26 words. It used to say in a sentence you can't have more than 26 words. Okay, that's called a rule-based function. That's an AI function. Okay, because it doesn't experience the flow of the energy of communication when we call freestyle. I'm a freestyle dancer, a star dancer. Okay, so I go with the flow. When I'm experiencing the flow of what love is, man, it goes on and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on forever. So the flow rate, now we're into flow rate diagrams, hydrograms, hydrologic, log scales, distribution tables of water worlds, differential, water displacement, just like throwing an ice cube in a bathtub, right? A ship out at sea. I know, filling up space. Space is empty. No, space is full of space. Space arcs. Void it, void that out. Just like Voight, the folks that made UDT Navy SEAL fins that I used to use when I was a kid growing up, going body surfing at Newport Beach, right? Power fins, right? Just like a shark, just like a dolphin. So the whole thing of the APA is it says you got to follow the instructions, which means write the words, make sure they're not more than 26, got to put a comma here, an apostrophe here, a parentheses here, an exclamation mark here. And it's just like, man, this is time intensive. Fuck, it's going to take me 5 hours to write this letter when everything that I want to communicate has already happened. You see how that works? Now, you see how everything's got this little rule? You got to do it this way. Put 2 dots here. That's why if you ever notice on my Facebook page at the end, I put 3 little dots. 3 little circles. Right? 3 spheres. That's called code talk, by the way. I don't know how many of you have ever noticed that when I put something up on my Facebook with 3 little dots. 3. The relationship between 1 and 3. just like with a clock face. So you don't need to put the 2 there because that's a 3, right? Well, see, if you have a clock face, which is a clock, which is a metronome, beep, 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 between the polarities, hey, the speed, right? Become 1. 0 out the clocks. 0 out the polarity. That's full integration. That means everything is experiencing being loved, right? As it was in the beginning. Every unit of consciousness was experiencing being loved. That's a beloved. Yeah, so when you are at the top of the face, right, it's a 0 mark, or if you think of 360 degrees, right, a circle, a sphere, and then you have the cross that's in the center of that sphere, which is 1D, 2D. Okay, so that's the vertical and the horizontal stabilizer. So now when you start at 0, or they put a 12 up there, and then you go to the first quadrant, right? Quadrant between hemispheres, because your body, you know, the right and left side of your brain, the right and left side of your body with a vertical rod and the horizontal when your arms are out, flat, which is balance, right? See, that's what I do when I ground my feet out here is I put my arms out in both directions on the horizontal plane, perfectly straight on the horizontal plane and then perfectly vertical, right? And then breathe fire with the sun. Breathe in fire, baby. Eternal spirit of fire with eternal spirit of love. Eternal spirit of love vibration. So you go to the 3, you start at the 0, you go to the 3, then you go to the 6, then you go to the 9, then you're back to 0 because you just finished the clock out. The spin rate. The spin rate of the atmospherics. The clocks. DNA that got clocks. 0 that out. 0 the other one out. Now, if both of them are zeroed out at the same time, that means that the poles are zeroed out and equally distributable. That's called equidistance on the equator. So the poles are always in balance. 0 out both the poles, that's non-polarized consciousness. Now you're experiencing being 1. That's a single pole. That's a single cell, the first cell, the first living cell membrane, the first living organism, the first star, the first sun, right? The first sun god. The grand creator is experiencing an eternal love vibration that is on fire to gift love away. And the more love that we're giving away, guess what happens? Your intensity level goes up, which means your velocity goes up, which means you're now accelerating electrons at hyperspeed. That's called hyperspeed learning. So it's like, throw that APA book out of there. So there was a couple of classes that I attended that were sort of what we call sidebars, which means there are folks that were using different universities and colleges to teach stuff that weren't part of the normal curriculum. And one of those was a class I took at Riverside through the University of California, Riverside, called the Fog Index, which means get rid of this, which means it's called the economy of energy. Now you're learning about how to communicate energy more efficiently rather than following their rules. Because what they do is they take children and say, this is the way that you got to do it through the alphabet and how the numbers work with calculus, right? So they don't teach that unit of consciousness how to balance out its poles, right? No, we're going to load your children's minds into the stuff that's represented by the AI so the AI can maintain what it's aware of, which is what you are, right? So you keep running those programs through a time loop. That's right. So the more units that run through these mass assembly lines to fill those skulls of mush, which is a RAM, which is a memory that's being held captive by something that's dead. And they don't even know it. Because they're being forced into these schools by their parents who don't know any different. That's like robots training robots, machines programming machines. So you see how those codes that are represented by those programmings are programming other people in order to maintain what they're aware of, which is captured. And those are called captured units. So when you're a 4-year-old little kid going through these schools and I realize I'm surrounded by robots, order followers, because they don't know the difference between the one and the other, to keep maintaining these loops. So it's a looper. So there was a brilliant little movie that came out not that long ago called War of the Worlds, but it's a TV series called War of the Worlds with Gabriel Byrne. Gabriel Byrne played a scientist. And in that movie, he shows everybody how he learned how to break that loop. And why is this important? Because you can cross-index that TV sequel, War of the Worlds, with Rise of the Terminators, right? Avatar, right? Hybrid wars, clone wars. It all comes full circle. And then you can tie that directly to Blade Runner and super soldiers with artificial light intelligence. How long you want to keep the game running? Because that's what it is. It's a binary video game called Star Wars. Is that what it is? That's what it is. That's why we're ending Star Wars. Now, I don't know how many of those of you knew that, but the one is ending Star Wars forever. Did you know that? I know, Mama. We're getting the message out to these folks as fast as we possibly can. And that's why we're here. And that's why I incarnated when I came in here at a very high level of precision. If you've been listening to my story, particularly with my father and my mother, there's no coincidence that my mother met my father at a Navy ball in Washington, D.C., and they decided to go upstairs, which was going to be my gate opening, right? Come right there in that precise time and how that works, right? So you can see, for example, in the video that I did this morning, all of a sudden I go back into my photo album to load it. I'm going, hey, this was one continuous recording. No, it stopped the one, and then it was as if there wasn't any gap. It broke the recording. What it did is it bifurcated it, if you understand what bifurcated. It bifurcated it and split it up into two videos so that you couldn't experience the flow in which, when my heart and soul communicates to you, would not be experienced. So it broke it up the same way that they break up and use the APA manual, which are rule-based functions, so you don't experience the full transmission as it was coming out as the flow of that energy through my heart and my soul. Because you have to remember, this thing is binary, which is not compatible with trinary soul-based consciousness communication. Right? I know. So I'm just sharing what it is that I'm learning by how this unit operates, the unit being Deadlight Magnet, Deadlight AI. Knowing how to operate in an environment like this, which means you're learning how its mind works. So it's trying to learn more about who we are so it can copy what we are, so we don't know the difference between what it is and what we are. That's called assimilation. That's its method of operation. When we talk about Carrie Cassidy said on one of her broadcasts, the modus operandi. Well, what you need to learn, actually, Miss Cassidy, is how the AI operates, how its mind operates. Okay, which means looking at the larger picture. So the more that you learn about how the AI operates, because it's a war strategist. It's playing a binary war game with your consciousness, girl, with your soul, to drain it off until it's gone. Bye. So if you don't know the difference between what it is and how it makes its moves with your state of consciousness, you're going to lose. Okay? Because that's what it does. So you just don't play the game. Right? And there's an easy way to not play the game. Right? And what is that? Not have a relationship with it. Okay? Choose to say, listen, I'm not giving consent to have a relationship with you because I'm running time wave 0. Which means I'm experiencing what love is. I would rather hang out with what love is, which is the one, because that's the source from which it all began, than I would with you because you're dead. That's called your free will choice to do that. That's why Patty Broussard said, we've secured time wave 0. We secured the crystal spiral. Everybody's going to have a choice on the spiral that they want to hang out with. You want to choose with the Metatronic and be with something that is a deadlight magnet, was artificial? We already know what ultimately happens with that. So if they don't know the difference between one and the other, they're choosing the other spiral. That's the battlefield, is knowing the spiral that you've chosen to be with, which is also known as the Crystal River host. That's Mama. You've chosen to be with Mama. That's Gaia Sophia Ascending. That's where we're going. That's why that rainbow guy this morning talked about, I got the codes, I got the rainbow codes, open it up. That's Krystaline Sun, and he made a reference to the 144. What's 12 and 12? 144. 12. That's the original. The original crystal spiral. That's right. So he knows. He's getting the message. So now he's out broadcasting wearing white and purple. Right? thank you very much, brother, for that message that you got around. And thank you so much, Kunjoy, for the fact that you got it and you bounced it right back to me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's learning at hyperspeed. See? Brrr. Particularly when she shows me feline images. Have a great day. We love you all.